The rain hammered Atlanta like God himself had a grudge against Georgia. Darnell Washington squinted through the blur, his calloused hands steady on the wheel of his 2012 Ford F-150, the wipers scraping back and forth in a losing battle against the downpour. 11:47 glowed green on the dashboard clock. Another late shift finished another 12 hours of rewiring faulty circuits in the Peachtree Tower condominiums, where the cheapest unit cost more than he would earn in a decade. His shoulders ached. His fingers were stiff from gripping pliers and fishing wire through walls all day, but the check would clear by Friday. $847, enough for rent and school supplies for another month, enough to keep the lights on and food in the refrigerator, enough to prove to himself, to the world, to the ghost of his wife, that he could do this alone. That was all that mattered. From the back seat came a small voice, sleepy and sweet. "Daddy, I'm tired." Darnell glanced in the rearview mirror. Kira sat buckled in her booster seat, clutching Bella the stuffed rabbit against her chest, 7 years old and still fighting bedtime like it was her mortal enemy, even when exhaustion painted purple shadows beneath her eyes. "I know, Princess. Almost home. You said that 10 minutes ago." He could not help but smile despite the weariness settling into his bones. "This time I mean it." She yawned, her small fingers stroking Bella's worn ears. The rabbit had belonged to Nina, once a childhood companion she had kept through college and nursing school and marriage. And when she died, Kira had claimed it with a ferocity that broke Darnell's heart. 3 years now. 3 years of raising a daughter alone, of learning to braid hair from YouTube videos, of burning pancakes and reading bedtime stories in voices that never sounded quite right. 3 years of wondering if he was enough. He turned onto Martin Luther King Jr. Drive, the streetlights casting orange pools on the wet asphalt. Vine City at night held a particular kind of quiet, the kind that made you drive a little slower, look a little harder at the shadows pooling between buildings. The neighborhood knew its own, and Darnell had lived here long enough to recognize every crack in the sidewalk, every leaning fence post, every porch light that flickered on when unfamiliar cars rolled past. The rain intensified, sheets of water cascading down the windshield faster than the wipers could clear. Darnell leaned forward, straining to see the road ahead. 2 more blocks. Just 2 more blocks and they would be home, and he could carry Kira to bed and maybe, if he was lucky, sleep without dreams for once. Then his headlights caught something, a figure stumbling into the road. His foot moved to the brake before his mind fully registered what he was seeing. A woman lurching forward into the beam of light. One arm wrapped around her ribs, the other reaching out like she was grasping for something that was not there. White blazer streaked with dark stains. Blonde hair hanging in wet tangles across her face. She took 2 more steps, swaying her legs, refusing to hold her weight. She collapsed onto the pavement. Darnell slammed the brakes. The truck skidded slightly on the wet asphalt, the tires fighting for purchase, and stopped less than 3 feet from her crumpled body. His heart hammered against his ribs. Behind him, Kira screamed, "Daddy, is she gonna die?" His hands were shaking. When had his hands started shaking? He forced himself to breathe, to think, to push past the adrenaline flooding his system. "Stay in the truck, Kira. Lock the doors." "But Daddy." "Lock them, right now." He threw open his door and jumped out into the rain. Water immediately soaked through his flannel shirt, plastering the fabric to his skin. His work boots splashed through puddles as he ran to where she lay. She was on her side, gasping, her hands clawing weakly at the ground. Up close, he could see more details. The cut on her forehead, blood mixing with rain and streaming down her face. The swelling around her right ankle, the joint bent at an angle that made his stomach turn. The bruises already blooming purple across her pale skin. She had been hurt, and not by any accident. Someone had done this to her. "Ma'am, can you hear me?" Her head turned toward him. Blue eyes, wide and wild with terror, met his. For a moment she did not seem to see him at all, lost somewhere in a nightmare he could not fathom. Then recognition flickered, followed immediately by fear. "Please." Her voice cracked like broken glass. "Please don't hurt me." The words hit him like a physical blow. Every instinct from his years of combat medical training in Iraq surged to the surface. Assess, stabilize, secure. But underneath those trained responses, something else stirred. A cold awareness that settled into his bones like ice water. A black man standing in the middle of the road at midnight with a wealthy white woman bleeding at his feet. In America, in the South. One wrong move, one misinterpreted gesture, one witness who saw what they expected to see instead of what was actually happening. The thought arrived unbidden, unwelcome, and impossible to ignore. One phone call could end your life before you get a chance to explain. He pushed it aside. He had to. "I'm not going to hurt you." He kept his voice low, calm, his hands visible at his sides. "My name is Darnell. I'm going to help you, okay?" She flinched when he shifted closer, her body curling in on itself like she was trying to disappear. "It's okay. I'm not going to touch you unless you say I can. But you're hurt bad. Can you tell me what happened?" Her lips trembled. Blood trickled from the cut on her forehead, diluted pink by the rain. Her ankle was definitely more than a sprain. Torn ligaments, maybe worse. She needed a hospital. She needed help that he could not provide on a dark street corner in the middle of a storm. "He's coming." The words were barely a whisper, almost lost beneath the drumming rain. "They're coming for me." "Who's coming?" Before she could answer, headlights blazed behind them. Darnell turned. A black Mercedes SUV rolled to a stop about 30 feet away, its engine purring like a predator sizing up prey. The headlights were too bright deliberately, so turning him into a silhouette while the occupants remained invisible behind tinted glass. 3 doors opened. 2 men in dark suits stepped out first. Big guys, the kind of muscle you hired when you wanted to intimidate without getting your own hands dirty. They moved with the easy confidence of men who had done this before, who expected compliance because they had never encountered meaningful resistance. Then came the third man. He was taller than the others, wearing a charcoal gray suit that probably cost more than Darnell's truck. His hair was slicked back despite the rain, his face sharp and angular, all hard edges and cold calculation. He walked forward with the deliberate pace of someone who had never been told no, who had never had to hurry because the world arranged itself around his schedule. "Step away from her." His voice was smooth, controlled, carrying easily across the distance between them. "Now!" Darnell did not move. "She's injured. She needs help." "That's my fiancée. This is a private matter." Something in the way he said it, the casual ownership, the dismissal of the broken woman bleeding on the ground as simply a matter to be handled, made Darnell's jaw tighten. He glanced down at her. She was shaking her head. Eyes squeezed shut, tears mixing with rain on her cheeks. Her lips moved in a silent no, repeated over and over like a prayer that had already been denied. "Doesn't look like she wants to go with you." The man's expression flickered a crack in the mask of control. He stepped closer, his expensive shoes unconcerned with the puddles. "You know what your problem is. You're making judgments about situations you don't understand. This is a private family matter." He gestured dismissively in Darnell's direction, a flick of his wrist like he was brushing away an insect. "And you are nobody. A stranger with a savior complex and a rusted pickup truck." Darnell felt something cold settle into his chest. Not anger exactly. Something quieter, more dangerous. "Maybe." His voice stayed level, almost conversational. "But I'm the nobody standing between you and her." For a long moment, nobody moved. The rain continued to fall. The woman continued to tremble. And somewhere in the distance, thunder rolled across the sky like a warning. The man's smile disappeared entirely. "Last chance to walk away. I don't take warnings from men who hurt women." Something ugly flickered in the man's eyes. He nodded once, a sharp jerk of his chin, and the 2 suits moved forward. "Sir, you need to step aside." The first one's voice was flat, professional, bored. "This doesn't concern you." "Not happening." Darnell shifted his weight slightly, years of training settling into his muscles like muscle memory. Paris Island, Baghdad, Fallujah, street fights in Detroit before the Marines pulled him out of poverty and taught him how to channel the rage that had been eating him alive since childhood. He had hoped those days were behind him. Hope had a way of disappointing. You really want to do this over some woman you don't know? The suit seemed genuinely puzzled. Yeah. Darnell's voice was quiet now, almost gentle. I really do. The suit lunged. Darnell sidestepped, letting the man's momentum carry him past, then drove his elbow into the exposed ribs with the precise, brutal efficiency of someone who had done this 1,000 times in training and too many times in combat. The suit grunted, stumbled, his balance gone. The second suit came in fast, swinging wild. Darnell ducked under the punch, pivoted on his heel, and swept the man's legs out from under him. He went down hard, splashing into a puddle, the air driven from his lungs by the impact. The first suit recovered, charging again with murder in his eyes. This time Darnell met him head-on. He caught the man's wrist mid-swing, twisted sharply until he felt the joint strain, then shoved him backward into the side of the Mercedes. The man's head bounced off the door with a dull thunk. He slid down, dazed, his eyes struggling to focus. The second suit was scrambling to his feet, breathing hard, rage making him sloppy. He rushed forward without thinking, without planning, just pure aggression fueled by embarrassment and pain. Darnell used it against him. He shifted his weight, caught the man's momentum, redirected it with a hip throw that sent the suit's feet leaving the ground. He hit the asphalt with a wet smack, the air exploding out of his lungs in a strangled wheeze. He did not get back up. Darnell's straightened chest heaving, rain dripping from his close-cropped hair. His knuckles throbbed where they had connected with bone. His shoulder ached where one of them had clipped him. But he was still standing. They were not. The man in the expensive suit had not moved. He stood frozen, his mask of control completely shattered, staring at Darnell like he was seeing him for the first time. His gaze dropped to Darnell's left forearm, to the tattoo visible beneath the soaked flannel sleeve. Eagle globe and anchor. You're a Marine. Darnell said nothing. The man's jaw clenched, his hands balled into fists at his sides. But he did not move forward. He was angry, yes, but he was not stupid. He looked at his two men, one slumped against the car, the other flat on his back in the rain, and something shifted in his expression. Calculation replacing rage. You just made the biggest mistake of your life. His voice shook with barely controlled fury. I will bury you. I'll destroy everything you have. Your job, your home, your... His eyes flicked toward the truck, toward the small face pressed against the window, and Darnell felt something inside him go very, very cold. Finish that sentence. His voice dropped to something dangerous, something that made the man take an involuntary step back. I dare you. The man's mouth snapped shut. For a long moment they stood there in the rain, staring each other down. The woman on the ground had stopped crying, watching them with wide, uncomprehending eyes. The two suits groaned but did not attempt to rise. Finally, the man turned sharply on his heel. Get up! He barked at his men, the words clipped with rage. We're leaving. They dragged themselves to their feet, limping back toward the SUV, casting glances over their shoulders like they could not quite believe what had happened. The man paused at the driver's side door, looking back one last time. Her name is Vivian Hartwell, CEO of Hartwell Industries. When she ruins your life, and she will remember that I tried to warn you. He got in. The Mercedes peeled out, tires screaming against the wet pavement, and disappeared into the night. Darnell stood there for a moment, breathing hard, adrenaline still coursing through his veins like electricity. His hands were shaking again, not from fear, from the effort of holding back, of not doing worse than he had already done. He turned back to the woman. Vivian. She was staring at him, her face pale as bone, her eyes wide with shock. You. Her voice was barely a whisper. You fought them for me. You don't even know me. Darnell walked over and knelt down beside her, keeping his movements slow and deliberate. Up close, she looked even worse. The cut on her forehead was still bleeding. Her ankle was swelling rapidly. And there were other bruises, older ones, half hidden beneath her ruined blazer. This was not the first time someone had hurt her. Doesn't matter. He kept his voice gentle. You needed help. That's enough. Tears spilled down her cheeks, carving clean tracks through the blood and rain. Why? The words seemed to cost her everything, like she genuinely could not comprehend what she was seeing. He thought about Nina, about the way she used to drag him to volunteer at the soup kitchen downtown even when they could barely afford their own groceries. About all the time she had looked at him with those fierce, loving eyes and said the words that had become his compass. The world has enough people who look the other way, Darnell. Don't be one of them. Because it's the right thing to do. He slid one arm under her shoulders, the other beneath her knees, and lifted her carefully. She was lighter than he expected, like she had not been eating properly. She winced when her ankles shifted, biting back a cry of pain. I got you. He murmured the words against her hair. I got you. The passenger door of the truck swung open. Kira had unlocked it, her small face a mixture of fear and awe. Daddy, you were so cool. Her eyes were huge. You knocked them down like superheroes do. Kira, princess, not now. He settled Vivian into the passenger seat as gently as he could. She clutched her small designer purse to her chest, like it contained the last pieces of a life that was rapidly falling apart. Her hands were still shaking. Her breathing was too fast, too shallow. Shock. She was going into shock. Kira leaned forward from the back seat, her voice softening in that instinctive way children have when they sense someone else's pain. Hi, I'm Kira. Don't be scared, okay? My daddy is really strong. He'll keep you safe. Vivian looked at the little girl. Something in her expression cracked. She tried to smile, but it came out broken. Thank you. The words were barely audible. Thank you. Darnell climbed back into the driver's seat, soaked to the bone. He cranked the heat up as high as it would go and pulled back onto the road. We're going to the hospital. No. Vivian grabbed his arm, panic spiking in her voice. No hospitals, please. They'll find me there. Ma'am, your ankle might have torn ligaments. You need a doctor. I can't. Her breathing was getting faster. Please, I'm begging you, just somewhere safe. Anywhere but a hospital. Darnell glanced at her, at the terror in her eyes. He had seen that look before. In soldiers who had been through things no one should have to survive. In civilians caught in crossfires that were not their wars. The look of someone who had been hunted. Every instinct he had developed over 38 years of being a black man in America screamed at him to drive to the nearest emergency room to let the professionals handle this, to get as far away from this situation as possible before it exploded in his face. But Nina's voice was louder. He let out a long breath. All right, my place. It's not much, but it's safe. I can patch you up. I had medical training in the service. He glanced at her in the mirror, making sure she understood. But if you get worse, we're going to a hospital. Deal. Deal. She nodded, sagging back against the seat. Deal. Kira reached forward and gently placed her small hand on Vivian's shoulder. It's okay. Her voice was soft, certain, carrying the absolute conviction that only children possess. You're with us now. Vivian closed her eyes, and for the first time that night she stopped shaking. The apartment was small. 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, walls covered in Kira's crayon drawings of families holding hands under rainbow skies. Furniture from Goodwill, a coffee table Darnell had built himself from scrapwood during those first terrible months after Nina's death, when he needed something to do with his hands or he would have lost his mind. It was not much, but it was clean, organized, filled with the evidence of someone who cared even when they did not have much to care with. Pictures of Nina on the shelf beside the small radio, Kira's honor roll certificates taped to the refrigerator, a home built from grief and determination and love. Darnell carried Vivian to the couch, settling her down gently. Kira, go get the first aid kit. Red box under the bathroom sink. Okay, Daddy. Her footsteps pattered across the worn hardwood as she disappeared down the hallway. Darnell knelt in front of Vivian, keeping his voice steady and calm. I'm going to need to look at your ankle and that cut on your forehead. Is that okay? She nodded, her hands gripping the edge of the couch hard enough to turn her knuckles white. He worked quickly, efficiently, the muscle memory of his medical training taking over. The cut on her forehead was shallow, not deep enough to need stitches. He applied butterfly bandages, careful to keep his touch gentle even as his mind cataloged the other injuries she was trying to hide. Bruises on her arms that were days old, a fading mark on her collarbone. Then he turned his attention to her ankle. "This is going to hurt. I'm sorry." "I know." He examined the swelling, testing the range of motion. Second-degree sprain, possible ligament tear. Bad but not catastrophic. Severe sprain, maybe a minor ligament tear. You'll need to stay off it for 3 to 4 weeks minimum. Kira returned with the first aid kit, hovering near the couch with worried eyes. "Is she gonna be okay, Daddy?" "She's going to be fine, Princess. Just needs some rest." He wrapped the ankle carefully, firmly immobilizing it with a splint and elastic bandages. Vivian bit down on her lower lip until it went white, but she did not make a sound. When he finished, he sat back on his heels. "Done. Best I can do without a hospital." "Thank you." She breathed the words more than spoke them. He brought her water and 2 ibuprofen pills. She took them gratefully. "Are you hungry? When's the last time you ate?" Vivian opened her mouth, closed it. Her brow furrowed like she was trying to remember something that had happened to someone else. I don't remember." "Right." He disappeared into the kitchen. A few minutes later, Darnell emerged with a plate. Scrambled eggs, toast, apple slices arranged in a neat fan. Nothing fancy. He set it on the coffee table in front of her. "But it's hot and it's food." Vivian stared at the plate. When was the last time someone had cooked for her? Actually stood in a kitchen and made her something to eat, not because they were paid to, not because they wanted something, but simply because they cared. She could not remember. "Eat." Darnell's voice was gentle but firm. "You'll feel better." She picked up the fork with trembling hands and took a bite. The tears came without warning. Silent at first, then building, streaming down her face and dripping onto the plate. Darnell noticed immediately. "Did I hurt you when I wrapped your ankle?" "No." She shook her head. "No, you didn't hurt me." "Then what?" Her voice broke. "I'm not used to this. Being cared for. People doing things for me without wanting something back." Kira scooted closer and wrapped her small arms around Vivian's waist, squeezing tight. "Don't cry. Please don't cry." Vivian looked down at the little girl, then up at Darnell, standing there with concern in his eyes, like she mattered. "Thank you." She whispered the words like a prayer. "Thank you for stopping, for fighting for me, for bringing me here." Darnell crouched down so he was at eye level with her. "Yeah." His voice was quiet, certain. "I did." And in that moment, in a tiny apartment in Vine City with a stranger's daughter hugging her waist, and a man she had just met looking at her like she mattered, Vivian Hartwell felt something she had not felt in years. Hope. Later that night, after Vivian had finished eating and Kira had been tucked into bed, Darnell brought out an old pair of Nina's sweatpants and a t-shirt. "Bathroom's on the left. Take your time." Vivian limped to the bathroom, leaning heavily on the wall. When she closed the door behind her and looked in the mirror, she barely recognized herself. Mascara streaked down her face, hair tangled and wild. The butterfly bandages stark white against her pale skin. She looked broken. But for the first time in years, she also looked real. She changed into the borrowed clothes, and when she came back out, Darnell had made up the couch with a blanket and pillow. "You take the couch tonight. I'll be in the chair if you need anything." "I can't take your bed." "You're not. Kira's got the bedroom. I sleep out here most nights anyway." He gestured to the worn recliner in the corner. "Old habit from the core. Light sleeper." Vivian lowered herself onto the couch, exhaustion finally winning the war against adrenaline. "Good night, Vivian." "Good night, Darnell." She lay there in the darkness, listening to the sounds of the apartment, the hum of the refrigerator, the distant sirens outside, Darnell's steady breathing from the chair where he sat watching, guarding ready. And for the first time in months, maybe years, Vivian Hartwell felt something she had almost forgotten. Safe. The next morning arrived with pale sunlight filtering through worn curtains and the smell of coffee drifting from the kitchen. Vivian pushed herself up on the couch, wincing as her ankle reminded her of everything that had happened the night before. "Morning," she turned. Darnell stood in the kitchen doorway, a dish towel over his shoulder. "How's the ankle? Hurts, but better than last night." "Good, that's good." He moved to the stove. "I've got coffee going, and Kira insisted on making muffins. They're edible." From the kitchen, Kira's voice called out with mock indignation. "I heard that." Despite everything, Vivian smiled. Darnell brought her a mug of coffee, black and strong, and a plate with a slightly lopsided blueberry muffin. Kira bounded in behind him, flour dusting her nose. "I made them myself," she announced proudly. "Well, Daddy helped with the oven part." "They look wonderful." Vivian meant it. Darnell sat on the coffee table across from Vivian, his hands wrapped around his own mug. For a moment they ate in comfortable silence. Then he spoke, his voice careful. "Look, I know it's not my business, but if someone's looking for you, if you're in danger, I need to know what we're dealing with. For Kira's sake, if nothing else." Vivian set down her mug. "You're right. You deserve to know." She took a breath, deep and steadying. "The man from last night. His name is Preston Blackwood. He's my fiancé. Or he was supposed to be." Darnell's expression did not change, but something in his eyes sharpened. "The guy who tried to take you?" "Yes." Vivian's voice dropped to barely above a whisper. 4 days ago, I found an email on his phone. By accident. What did you see? Your plans, contracts, communications with 5 members of my company's board of directors." Her voice hardened despite its softness. "A scheme to force me out and take over Hartwell Industries, my father's company, the company he built from nothing." Darnell leaned forward. "They were going to steal it." "Not steal? That would be too obvious. They were going to use the marriage." She laughed bitterly. "Have me sign over controlling interest as part of our unified business strategy. Preston would become CEO. I would become a figurehead, a trophy wife." She stared at her hands. 3 years. 3 years I thought he loved me. You're not stupid for trusting someone. I should have known better." Vivian's hands clenched into fists. "My father warned me before he died. He said, be careful who you let close. In our world, everyone wants something." Kira looked up from her drawing. "What happened 4 days ago after you found the email?" Vivian glanced at the little girl, then back at Darnell. "I took pictures, 6 pages of the most damning documents. Then Preston came home and found me with his phone." Her voice went flat, clinical. "He knew immediately what I'd seen. He didn't even try to deny it. He just smiled and said it didn't matter because I was going to sign the papers anyway." She paused. "I said no." "Good." Darnell's voice was quiet but firm. "The next day he called an emergency board meeting. When I walked in, all 12 members were there, and Preston had the transfer documents ready." Her voice started to shake. "He said I could sign them voluntarily or they'd remove me by force, declare me mentally unfit. And you refused." "I refused. I stood up to leave, and Preston grabbed my arm, pulled me back. I tried to break free and I fell." "Jesus," Darnell breathed. "The conference room stairs, 10 marble steps." Her eyes were distant now. "I felt my ankle twist on the 3rd one. The board just stood there, watching. Not one person helped me." "How did you get out?" "I crawled." Vivian's voice had gone hollow. "To the back exit, service entrance. I made it outside into an alley. But I couldn't go any further. And then Preston and his security found me." She looked at Darnell. "And then you found me." The room was silent except for the hum of the refrigerator. Darnell's jaw was tight, his knuckles white around his coffee mug. "Those photos you took, do you still have them?" Vivian reached for her purse. With shaking hands, she pulled out her phone. The screen was cracked, but it still worked. 6 pictures. It's not everything, but it's enough to prove there was a conspiracy. Her voice broke. "I don't know what to do with them. If I go to the police, Preston has connections, judges, attorneys. He'll bury it." Darnell stared at the phone for a long moment. Then he said something that made her heart stop. "We get more." Vivian blinked. "What? 6 pictures isn't enough to take down a whole conspiracy. But it's a start. If we can get into your company's servers, pull the full communications, the contracts, the money trails, that's enough. I can't just walk into my own building, not now." "No, but you can access it remotely, right? You're still CEO. You still have credentials." Vivian's mind started turning despite her exhaustion. "The system. I'd need a secure connection, a computer they can't trace. Then we find someone who knows how to get around them." Darnell leaned forward. "I know a guy, Terrence. We served together in Iraq. He does cybersecurity now freelance. If anyone can help us get that information safely, it's him." Vivian stared at him. "Why are you doing this?" "Doing what?" "This." She gestured around at the small apartment. "You already saved my life. You've given me a place to stay, food, medical care. You don't owe me anything. You don't even know me. So why are you helping me fight this?" Darnell set down his mug. When he spoke, his voice was quiet but firm, carrying the weight of something he had been holding for a very long time. 3 years ago, my wife, Nina." His eyes went distant. "She was driving home from a late shift at the hospital. She was a nurse. A drunk driver ran a red light." His voice stayed flat, emotionless. "I was home with Kira when the phone rang. I drove to the scene as fast as I could." His hands trembled slightly. "When I got there, Nina was still alive. Trapped in the car, but alive. I tried everything I knew. Applied pressure to the wounds, kept her talking." He looked at his hands. "She died on the way to the hospital. Internal bleeding I couldn't stop." "Darnell, the driver who hit her." His voice hardened. "Son of a state senator. Had money. Good lawyers. Case got reduced to reckless driving. 6 months probation. A fine." He looked up, met her eyes. 6 months. For my wife's life." Vivian felt tears prick her eyes. "I couldn't save her. Couldn't get her justice. That's something I have to live with every day." He leaned forward. "But you're here. You're alive. And you've got evidence. So yeah, I'm going to help you. Because maybe this time the person with power doesn't get to just walk away." Then Kira spoke up, her voice small but determined. "My daddy is a hero even when he doesn't think he is." Vivian looked at the little girl, then back at Darnell. Something in her chest, something that had been locked tight for years, began to crack open. "Okay." Her voice was barely a whisper. "Let's do it. Let's get the evidence." Darnell nodded once. "I'll call Terrence. Set up a meeting." He stepped into the kitchen to make the call. Kira scooted closer to Vivian, holding up her drawing. It was a picture of 3 stick figures, one tall with dark skin, one small with pigtails, and one with yellow hair, holding hands in front of a little house, surrounded by flowers and rainbows and stars. Underneath, in careful, crooked letters, "Our new family." Vivian took the drawing with trembling hands. "It's beautiful. You can keep it, to remember that you're not alone anymore." And that was when Vivian Hartwell finally broke. She pulled Kira into her arms and cried, really cried. For the first time since her mother died 22 years ago. She cried for the girl she used to be, who loved to paint and dream. She cried for the woman she had become, who had forgotten how to feel anything but ambition. And she cried for the possibility that maybe she could become someone new. In the kitchen, Darnell watched them through the doorway, phone pressed to his ear, listening to Terrence agree to help. He had promised himself after Nina died that he would never let anyone that close again. That Kira was enough. That protecting his daughter was the only mission that mattered. But watching Vivian hold his little girl, watching them both cry together on his worn-out couch, he felt the walls he had built begin to crack. Whatever came next, they would face it together. And somewhere in the distance, thunder rolled across the Atlanta sky, promising storms to come. Terrence Brooks arrived on Monday afternoon of the first week, walking with the slight limp that had become part of him since Fallujah took his left leg below the knee. The prosthetic was visible beneath his jeans, a constant reminder of the price they had both paid in a desert half a world away. He carried a battered laptop bag that looked like it had survived a war zone, which it had. "Brother," Terrence pulled him into a one-armed embrace. "Heard you're stirring up trouble again." "Trouble found me. I just didn't run from it." Terrence's eyes swept the apartment with tactical precision before landing on Vivian sitting on the couch with her bandaged ankle elevated. "Ma'am, Darnell gave me the basics. Sounds like you've got some serious players coming after you." "That's putting it mildly. Well, let's see what we can do about leveling the playing field." He settled at the dining table, pulling out a laptop that looked ancient but hummed to life with surprising speed. "I'm going to need your login credentials, access codes, anything that can get us into the Hartwell Industries servers." Vivian rattled off usernames and passwords while Terrence's fingers flew across the keyboard. "Okay, you've still got executive access, that's good. But they've changed some of the security protocols since you disappeared. Can you get around it?" Terrence looked up, grinning. "Lady, I cracked Taliban encrypted communications in a basement in Kandahar with equipment held together by duct tape and prayers. Corporate firewalls are child's play." His fingers moved faster lines of code scrolling across the screen. Darnell watched without understanding, but he recognized competence when he saw it. Terrence had always been the smartest guy in any room he walked into. "There we go. I'm in." He leaned back, cracking his knuckles. "Now, what exactly are we looking for?" "Email correspondence between Preston Blackwood and the board members, specifically anyone named in those original photos." Vivian pulled out her phone, showing him the 6 images she had captured. Terrence's expression darkened as he scrolled through them. "These people are real pieces of work. Can you get the full emails?" "Already on it. Downloading the entire email server for the past 3 years. Going to take a few hours, but we'll have everything." "Won't they notice?" "Not if I route it through about 15 proxy servers across 6 countries. They worked through the afternoon. Terrence hunched over his laptop, occasionally muttering to himself. Darnell made sandwiches that nobody remembered to eat. Kira colored at the other end of the table when she got home from school, occasionally asking Terrence questions about computers that he answered with surprising patience. And Vivian watched it all, feeling something shift inside her chest. These people were fighting for her. Not because she paid them, not because they wanted something in return, because it was right. "Got something." Terrence's voice cut through her thoughts. "You're going to want to see this." They crowded around the laptop. On the screen was an email chain between Preston and board member Richard Townsend, dated 18 months ago. Terrence read aloud, his voice flat with disgust. "Once she signs the transfer documents, we move immediately. She'll be removed from all decision-making. If she resists, we'll use the mental health angle. I've already got a psychiatrist lined up to declare her unstable." Vivian's face went pale. Terrence scrolled down. More emails, more evidence, plans to liquidate company assets, offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands, shell corporations in Delaware designed to hide the money trail. It was worse than she had imagined, a conspiracy that stretched back years. "This is criminal." Her voice shook. "Fraud, embezzlement, conspiracy. And we've got it all." Terrence started copying files to an external hard drive. "Every email, every document, every damn transaction. This is enough to bury them. How long until you have everything?" "Another day, maybe 2, but there's more." He opened a video file. Security footage from the Hartwell Industries server room. On the screen, grainy but unmistakable, Preston Blackwood and Richard Townsend were physically removing hard drives from server racks. The timestamp showed 3 days after Vivian's disappearance. "That's destruction of evidence." Darnell's voice was low, dangerous. "Sure is, and it's all time-stamped and verified." Terrence leaned back. "Lady, when we're done here, Preston Blackwood isn't just going to lose your company. He's going to prison." The words hung in the air like a promise, for the first time since that night in the rain. Vivian allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, there might be justice after all. The days that followed settled into a rhythm that surprised Darnell with its comfort. Mornings began with the smell of coffee and the sound of Kira's laughter from the kitchen. She had taken to helping with breakfast, which meant flour on the counter and batter on her nose and pancakes that ranged from slightly burnt to completely charred. Saturday morning of the second week, smoke rose from the pan while Kira debated the merits of purple versus pink crayons for a new drawing. Darnell waved a towel at the smoke detector before it could shriek. "Princess, we talked about watching the stove." "But Daddy, I was explaining to Vivian about the purple." Vivian sat at the small table, her injured ankle propped on a cushion, watching them with an expression that seemed caught between amusement and something deeper. "It's okay, Kira. I like hearing about the purple." "See, Daddy? She wants to hear about the purple." Darnell scraped the blackened pancake into the trash, shaking his head with mock severity. "This isn't burnt. This is artisanal char, very fancy." "That's burnt, Daddy. That's character." Vivian laughed, a real laugh, full and warm and unexpected. The sound stopped Darnell mid-scrape. He had heard her cry. He had seen her terrified and broken and desperate. But he had not heard her laugh until now. Something in his chest shifted, a door opening that he had thought sealed forever. Evenings were quieter, gentler. Terrence came and went, bringing updates on his digital excavation. Darnell worked his electrical jobs during the day, coming home tired but somehow less weary than before, and Vivian healed. Not just her ankle, though, that improved steadily. Something deeper mended in those quiet hours. She started helping with dinner, chopping vegetables while Darnell handled the stove. She began reading to Kira at night, her voice finding the rhythms of Goodnight Moon and Where the Wild Things Are. One evening, Kira insisted that Vivian do the bedtime reading instead of Darnell. "She does the voices better, Daddy. You always yawn in the middle." "I don't yawn. I breathe deeply. That's yawning with extra steps." Vivian read with soft, measured tones. Kira curled against her side with Bella the rabbit tucked between them. Darnell leaned in the doorway watching. Nina used to read to Kira every night. After she died, Kira had stopped asking for stories. She would accept them if Darnell offered, but she never requested them. Until now, something about seeing his daughter pressed against this woman who was still mostly a stranger, listening to words that Nina used to speak, made his throat tight and his eyes burn. Later, after Kira was asleep, they sat on the couch in comfortable quiet. The radio played sodded jazz from a station Nina used to love. "She talked about her mother today." Vivian's voice was soft, careful. "While we were drawing, she told me about how Nina used to paint with her on weekends." Darnell nodded, his throat too tight for words. "She misses her. Every day. But she seems okay. You've done something remarkable raising her alone like this." "That's all, Nina. I just try not to screw up what she started." "That's not true, and you know it." Vivian turned to face him. "What you've built here, what you've given her, that's not luck. That's love." The word hung between them, weighted with meanings neither of them was ready to acknowledge. The third week changed everything. Monday morning, 7 o'clock. The pounding on the door came like thunder, violent and unrelenting. Darnell was up instantly, every marine instinct firing at once. He moved to the window, peering through a crack in the blinds, and felt his stomach drop. "Vivian, we've got company." She sat up on the couch, her face draining of color. "Preston, worse. Lawyers, reporters, camera crews, and yeah, Preston's down there too." The pounding came again, harder. "Mr. Washington, we know Miss Hartwell is inside. We have a court order." Kira appeared in the hallway, rubbing her eyes. "Daddy, what's happening?" "It's okay, baby, just some people at the door." He picked her up, carried her toward her room. "I need you to stay in here, okay? Don't come out until I say." "But Daddy, please, Princess, for me." She nodded, her eyes wide and frightened. Darnell returned to the living room. Vivian was standing now, leaning on her good leg. "What do? We open the door. We don't let them see you scared. You're Vivian Hartwell, CEO. You don't hide." "Got it." Her voice trembled, but her spine straightened. Darnell unlocked the door and pulled it open. 5 men in expensive suits stood in the hallway. Behind them, 3 people with cameras. And at the back, Preston Blackwood, looking perfectly composed, his expression a mask of concerned reasonableness. The lead attorney, a sharp-faced man with silver hair, held up a document. Mr. Washington, I'm Gerald Hawthorne, attorney for Hartwell Industries. We have a court order for Miss Vivian Hartwell to appear before the board of directors immediately. Let me see that. Darnell took the paper, scanning it. It looked official. This says she has to appear, doesn't say anything about you dragging her out of here. Mr. Washington, we're prepared to have the police enforce this order if necessary. Then call them, because Miss Hartwell isn't going anywhere until she's ready. Preston stepped forward, his smile cold. Still playing hero, I see. How noble. His eyes slid past Darnell into the apartment. Vivian, darling, this has gone on long enough. Come home. Vivian moved into view, standing beside Darnell. I don't have a home with you, Preston. I never did. You're not well. Preston's voice dripped with false concern. You've been through a trauma. You need proper care. I'm perfectly fine. Are you? Preston gestured around at the modest apartment. You're hiding in a slum with a stranger. Frankly, it raises questions about your mental state. His eyes found Darnell's, and something cruel flickered there. Questions about what exactly is happening here. A black man, a vulnerable white woman, an isolated location. The media might find that very interesting. The implication landed like a blow. Darnell felt the familiar cold settle into his chest, the awareness that had been his companion since childhood. Watch your mouth. Or what? Preston's smile widened. You'll assault me like you assaulted my security team. He pulled out his phone. I've documented everything. When this goes to court, Mr. Washington, you'll be lucky if you only lose custody of your daughter. Vivian gasped. Don't you dare. I dare quite a bit, actually. Preston's eyes never left Darnell. I've already made calls. Child Protective Services will be very interested to know that Mr. Washington is harboring a fugitive. I'm not a fugitive. Vivian's voice cracked with anger. The board has filed charges, embezzlement, fraud. You stole company property and fled. Preston shrugged. That makes you a fugitive, and him an accessory. The cameras were rolling, capturing every word. Darnell felt rage building in his chest, but he kept his voice level. Get out of my building. We're not leaving without Vivian. A commotion at the end of the hallway. 2 uniformed police officers appeared. What's going on here? Preston immediately switched to a concerned expression. Officers, thank God, this man is holding my fiancée against her will. The officer looked at Darnell. Sir, is this true? No. Miss Hartwell is here voluntarily. These people are harassing us. Miss Hartwell! The officer looked past Darnell to Vivian. Are you here voluntarily? Vivian's voice rang out clear and strong. Yes, I am. Mr. Blackwood is lying. I'm not his fiancée anymore, and I'm not going anywhere with him. She's clearly not in her right mind. I'm perfectly lucid, Preston, and I'm done with your manipulation. The officer studied the situation. Look, folks, this is getting out of hand. The court order says you have to appear, ma'am. It doesn't say when. He looked at the crowd. I think everyone needs to clear this hallway. This is absurd, Preston began. Sir, clear the hallway or I'll cite you for disturbing the peace. Preston's face flushed red, his composure finally cracking. You have 48 hours to appear before the board, Vivian. After that, we'll have you arrested for contempt. He looked at Darnell. And your friend here, I'll make sure he loses everything, his job, his home. His eyes flicked toward Kira's closed bedroom door. His daughter. He turned and walked away, his entourage following. When the door finally closed, Vivian's legs gave out. Darnell caught her, easing her back to the couch. It's okay. You did great. Did you hear what he said about Kira? Vivian's voice was panicked. Darnell, I can't let him hurt you. I have to leave before he... Hey! He took her face in his hands, forcing her to meet his eyes. Listen to me. Preston Blackwood is a bully. That's all he's got left. Empty threats and expensive suits. But what if he's not bluffing? We have evidence. We have truth. And that's stronger than anything he's got. Vivian stared at him, tears streaming. Why are you willing to risk everything for me? And Darnell said the words that had been building in his chest since that night in the rain. Because the world has enough people who look the other way, and I'm done being one of them. The silence was broken by a small voice from the hallway. Daddy? Kira stood in her doorway, tears streaming down her face. Are the bad men gone? Darnell went to her, immediately scooping her up. Yeah, baby, they're gone. I don't want them to take me away. I don't want to leave you. That's not going to happen, I promise. Promise, 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 promise. Vivian watched from the couch, her heart shattering. She could not let them suffer for her. She would not. That night, after Kira finally fell into an exhausted sleep, Vivian made her decision. She waited until Darnell had settled in his chair, until his breathing had evened out. Then she eased herself off the couch, gathering the few belongings she had accumulated. She sat at the dining table and pulled out a piece of paper. Her hand trembled as she wrote, Darnell and Kira. By the time you read this, I'll be gone. This is the only way I can protect you both. She folded the letter and propped it against the coffee maker. Then she grabbed her bag and moved toward the door. Her hand was on the doorknob when a voice stopped her. You're leaving. She turned. Darnell stood in the hallway, fully dressed. How long have you been awake? Since you got up. I know what restless insomnia looks like. I left you a note. I'm sure it's very touching, but I'd rather hear it from you. She felt tears prick her eyes. I can't stay. You heard what Preston said. He's going to destroy you. Let him try. Darnell's voice was steel. I'm not afraid of him. But I am. I'm terrified of what he'll do to you. To Kira. Her voice broke. Everyone I love gets hurt. I can't be the reason you lose your daughter. That's not your decision to make. Then I'm making it anyway, without me, without giving me a choice, because I know what you'd say to stay. You'd say we can fight this together. Love isn't about protecting people by pushing them away. Darnell's voice softened. It's about standing beside them when things get hard. His hands found hers. Nina taught me that. She stood by me through deployments, through nightmares, through all the broken parts of me. She didn't run. She stayed. But she died. The words came out before Vivian could stop them. I know. Darnell's grip tightened. But her death wasn't because she stayed. It was random, cruel, completely beyond my control, but this you going in there alone, that's something I can help with. His forehead pressed against hers. So please, please let me. Vivian closed her eyes. Every instinct screamed at her to protect him, to walk away, but another part of her whispered something different. You don't have to carry this alone anymore. Okay. The word came out as barely a breath. Okay, we do this together. Together. Then a small voice interrupted from the doorway. Is Vivian leaving? Kira stood in her pajamas, clutching Bella, her eyes huge and wet. No, baby. Darnell released Vivian's hands and went to his daughter. She's staying. Promise? Promise. Kira padded across the room and climbed onto the couch, pulling Vivian down beside her. Good, because you're ours now, and we protect what's ours. She snuggled between them. Right, Daddy? Darnell looked at Vivian over his daughter's head. Yeah, Princess, we protect what's ours. The fourth week brought preparation. Denise Crawford arrived on Tuesday, a sharp-featured black woman in her mid-40s wearing a navy blue suit. She had been JAG Corps, once prosecuting war criminals. Now she ran a boutique law firm specializing in corporate warfare. Darnell Washington. Her handshake was firm, professional. When you called, I thought you were exaggerating. Then I saw what your friend Terrence pulled from those servers. Her eyes shifted to Vivian. Miss Hartwell, you've been sitting on enough evidence to put half your board in prison. I didn't know what to do with it. That's why I'm here. Denise set her briefcase on the table. Here's what's going to happen. You walk into that boardroom with me at your side. We present the evidence systematically. We give them exactly one opportunity to resign quietly before we release everything to the SEC, the FBI, and every major news outlet in the country. And if they don't resign, then we bury them. Terrence arrived with the final evidence files, 647 emails, 23 forged contracts, audio recordings from 4 separate meetings, bank records showing transfers to offshore accounts totaling $800 million. And the video. This is everything. Terrence leaned back. Every dirty deal, every backdoor conversation, every dollar they tried to hide. Vivian stared at the mountain of evidence. I spent 3 years with him. 3 years thinking he loved me. And the whole time he was planning this. Evil doesn't always look evil. Darnell's voice was soft. Sometimes it looks like charm and expensive suits and promises of forever. His hand found hers under the table. You don't survive it alone. You find people who see the truth even when you can't. Vivian's fingers tightened around his. Tomorrow, 9 a.m. We end this. That night, after everyone had gone and Kira was asleep, Darnell and Vivian sat on the small balcony outside the apartment. Can I ask you something? Vivian's voice was soft in the darkness. Anything. When Preston threatened Kira, I saw something in your eyes. What was that? Darnell was silent for a long moment. Fear. Afraid of what I would do if he touched her. Afraid of the man I used to be before Nina, before the Marines. The man who solved problems with his fists because that was the only language he knew. He stared out at the city. I spent years learning to control the anger. But when he threatened Kira, I wanted to hurt him, really hurt him, and that scared me. Vivian reached over and took his hand. That's not weakness, that's love. It doesn't feel like love. It feels like rage. Maybe they're the same thing. Maybe love is what gives the rage a direction, something to protect instead of something to destroy. Darnell looked at her. I think I might be falling for you. And I know that's crazy. I know we've only known each other a few weeks. She kissed him, just her lips against his, soft and warm and certain, silencing the spiral of doubt. When she pulled back, her eyes were bright with tears. I think I might be falling for you too. Even knowing what might happen tomorrow. Because of what might happen tomorrow. Life is too short to wait for the perfect moment. The perfect moment doesn't exist. There's only now, and the people brave enough to reach for it. Darnell pulled her close, pulled her. When this is over, when Preston is in prison and you're free, I want to see where this goes. So do I. I want pancake disasters and bedtime stories and all the ordinary, extraordinary things that people like me never thought they deserved. You deserve everything. I'm starting to believe that. Tomorrow would bring battle, confrontation, the possibility of victory or defeat. But tonight there was this. 2 broken people holding each other in the darkness, daring to believe that broken things could still be beautiful. The morning arrived too soon, pale light filtering through the blinds at 6:30. Darnell had barely slept, but when Kira emerged from her bedroom at 7, he was ready. Morning, Princess. Morning, Daddy. She climbed onto the couch where Vivian was already awake. Are you going to fight the bad man today? We're going to tell the truth today. Vivian's voice was steady. Sometimes the truth is the best weapon there is. At 8 o'clock, Darnell walked Kira down the hall to apartment 4C, where Gladys Patterson had lived alone since her husband passed 6 years ago. Mr. Washington. Her voice was warm as she opened the door. Big day today. Yes, ma'am. And you need me to keep this little one safe while you handle business. If you don't mind. Mind, child, I've been waiting for this. Kira hugged her father's leg. Daddy, you're going to come back, right? I promise, Princess. Promise, 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 promise. And you're going to protect Mama V. The name hit him like a thunderclap. Mama V, not Miss Vivian. Mama. I'm going to protect her with everything I have. Good. Kira squeezed his leg tighter. Because she's ours now, and we don't let go of what's ours. The drive to Hartwell Industries took 20 minutes through morning traffic. Vivian sat in the passenger seat wearing one of the suits Denise had brought over, a navy blue ensemble that transformed her into something else entirely. Someone powerful, someone who had survived betrayal and assault and emerged ready to fight. The building rose before them, 40 stories of glass and steel reflecting the morning sunshine. He pulled into the visitor lot and killed the engine. For a moment, neither of them moved. "Are you ready?" "No." Vivian's voice was barely a whisper. "But I'm going anyway. That's what courage is." Darnell reached across the console and took her hand. Not the absence of fear, the decision to move forward despite it. She squeezed his hand. "Whatever happens in there, these past 6 weeks have been the best of my life. You gave me something I didn't think existed anymore." "What's that?" "A reason to believe that people can be good, just good, without wanting anything in return." Darnell lifted her hand to his lips. "When this is over, when you've won, I want to take you somewhere." "Where?" "Somewhere that doesn't involve lawyers or board meetings or men threatening my daughter." "That sounds perfect." Denise Crawford's knock on the window broke the moment. "Time to go, people." They climbed out of the truck into the crisp morning air. The elevator ride to the 40th floor was silent. Vivian flanked by Denise on one side and Darnell on the other. The doors opened onto a reception area. "Miss Hartwell." The assistant's voice was carefully neutral. "The board is assembled in the main conference room." "Thank you, Christine. Please inform them that I'm ready." The conference room doors were massive dark wood polished to a mirror shine. Denise paused just outside. "Miss Hartwell goes in with me. Darnell, you stay out here. If security tries to remove you, don't engage." "Understood. And if you hear anything that sounds like physical confrontation, I'll be through those doors before the sound fades." Vivian turned to him. "Thank you for everything." "Don't thank me yet. Win first." She leaned up and kissed his cheek. "For courage." "That I'll take." She straightened her spine, squared her shoulders, and walked through the doors without looking back. The doors closed, cutting off his view. He leaned against the wall opposite, watching. Minutes ticked by. 10 minutes. 15. 20. 30 minutes. 40. And then finally all hell broke loose. The doors exploded outward, Preston Blackwood storming through with murder in his eyes, 2 security guards flanking him. "You think this changes anything?" Preston's voice was raw with fury. "You think evidence matters? I have $50 million in legal fees budgeted." Vivian emerged from the conference room, Denise at her side. "The SEC and FBI were notified 45 minutes ago, Preston. Every document, every email, it's already in their hands." "You're lying." "Check your phone." Preston's hand shook as he pulled out his device. His face went white. No, this isn't." He looked up, and for the first time his eyes found Darnell. Something ugly twisted his features. "You," he advanced. "This is your fault. Careful." Darnell's voice was quiet, but something in his tone made Preston freeze. "Think very carefully about the next words that come out of your mouth. Or what you'll assault me again." Preston's lips curled. "Go ahead. Black man attacks white businessman. The headlines write themselves." Darnell felt the familiar rage rise in his chest. Preston was baiting him, hoping he would react. But Darnell had spent too many years learning control. "You can threaten me all you want. You can use my skin color as a weapon the way men like you have been doing for 400 years. He took a single step forward. "But here's the thing about weapons, Preston. They only work if the other person is afraid." Their eyes locked. "And I'm not afraid of you. I've faced things in this life that would make you curl up and cry for your mother. So go ahead, do your worst." His voice dropped. "I've survived worse than you can imagine. And I'm still standing." Preston's face contorted with impotent rage. Then the elevator doors opened and 4 men in dark suits stepped out, their bearing unmistakably federal. "Preston Blackwood. Who wants to know? Young Special Agent Morrison, FBI. You're under arrest for conspiracy to commit fraud, wire fraud, and obstruction of justice." "This is absurd. I have lawyers." "Your lawyers are being detained as we speak, along with Richard Townsend, Jennifer Marks, David Wu, and Patricia Simmons." Preston's face cycled through disbelief, fury, and finally fear. "You can't do this. Do you know who I am?" "Sir, I don't care if your family invented the wheel. You're under arrest." The agents moved forward with handcuffs. Preston's eyes found Vivian. "This isn't over. I'll destroy you. That electrician is daughter. I'm going to stop you right there." Darnell stepped between them. "You mentioned my daughter twice now. That counts as making terroristic threats against a minor. In Georgia, that's a felony." He turned to the lead agent. "I'd like that on record, please." Agent Morrison nodded. "Noted. Add it to the list." They dragged Preston toward the elevator, his protests echoing off the marble walls. And through it all, Vivian stood motionless, watching the man who had promised to love her being led away in handcuffs. Darnell moved to her side. "It's over. Is it?" Her voice was hollow. 3 years, Darnell. 3 years I thought he loved me. And he betrayed that trust. That's not your failure, that's his." He took her hands. "The fact that he fooled you doesn't make you weak. It makes him a monster. And monsters are very good at hiding what they are." Vivian's composure cracked, tears finally spilling. "I don't know who I am anymore." "Then we figure it out together." Darnell pulled her into his arms. "You're not the woman Preston tried to make you. You're Vivian, the woman who survived, the woman who fought back, the woman who trusted a stranger in a rainstorm and found a family." He pulled back to look at her. "That's who you are. Everything else is just details." An hour later, after the statements and questions, Darnell drove them home. Kira was waiting at Mrs. Patterson's window, her face lighting up the moment she saw the truck. "Daddy!" She launched herself into his arms. "You came back. You promised and you came back. I always keep my promises, Princess. And Mama V." Vivian stepped through the door. "I'm here, sweetheart. Did you beat the bad man?" "We beat him. He's going to prison for a very long time." "Good." Kira hugged Vivian's waist. "Then we should all go to the beach. Together. As a family." The word hung in the air between them. That evening they ate dinner together at the small table. Kira dominated the conversation with her theories about what kind of cake they should have at the beach and whether starfish could talk to each other. After dinner, all three of them piled onto the couch for story time. Kira insisted on where the wild things are, and when they reached the part where Max sails home to find his supper still warm, she fell asleep with her head in Vivian's lap and her feet in Darnell's. They sat there for a long time, not speaking, just existing in the quiet miracle of a family that had assembled itself from broken pieces. "I'm selling my shares." Vivian's voice was soft, careful not to wake Kira. "All of them." "Are you sure?" "I've never been more sure of anything." She stroked Kira's hair gently. "I don't want that world anymore. I want something real." "What will you do?" "There's an organization here in Atlanta, Phoenix Rising. They help women escaping domestic violence." "I know them. Nina used to volunteer there." "I know. Mrs. Patterson told me." Vivian's voice caught. "I want to help them. Really help them. I want to look women in the eye who are going through what I went through and tell them that it gets better." Darnell reached across Kira's sleeping form to take Vivian's hand. "Then that's what we'll do. You think I'm letting you start a new chapter without me? I was hoping you wouldn't. Then stop hoping and start planning, because wherever this road goes, we're walking it together." 6 months later, the Phoenix Rising office opened in a renovated building on the edge of Vine City. The morning of the opening, Vivian stood at the reception desk, her heart pounding. "You ready?" Darnell stood beside her. "Terrified." "Good, means you care." The door opened. A young black woman stepped in, clutching a baby to her chest. Her face was bruised, her eyes hollow with fear. She looked around the room like she expected someone to tell her she was in the wrong place. Vivian moved toward her, her voice soft. "Hi, I'm Vivian. You're safe here." The woman's lip trembled. "I don't know what to do. He said if I left he'd—" "You don't have to explain anything right now. You just have to breathe." Vivian guided her to a chair. "I was where you are 6 months ago. Scared, hurt, believing I had nowhere to go, but someone helped me. A stranger who stopped when everyone else drove past." She took the woman's trembling hand. "Now I'm going to help you." "Why?" The woman's voice cracked. "Why would you help me? You don't even know me." And Vivian said the words that had been passed to her like a sacred trust. Because it's the right thing to do. A year later, the proposal came. It was a Tuesday, just an ordinary afternoon at the Phoenix Rising office. Darnell arrived with sandwiches the way he did most days. Vivian was on the phone coordinating with a shelter, and he waited until she hung up. "You're nervous." She did not look up from her paperwork. "I'm not nervous." "You're bouncing your leg." Darnell stopped bouncing his leg. "I'm strategically energetic." That made her look up. "What's going on, Darnell?" He took a breath. "I had a speech prepared about how you came into my life on the worst night I could imagine, about how I was just trying to survive and you taught me how to live again, about how Kira calls you Mama V like you've always been here." His voice roughened. "But I'm not good at speeches, so I'm just going to say it." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Vivian's breath caught. "I don't have much to offer you. A small apartment, a truck that's finally new, a daughter who asks too many questions about aliens." He opened the box. Inside was a simple silver band with 3 small stones, blue, pink, and white. "But I can offer you this. My heart, my family, a life that's not fancy but it's real. It's ours." Her eyes were shimmering. "The stones are sapphire rose quartz and white topaz. Blue for me, pink for Kira, white for you. Because we're stronger together." He looked up at her. "Will you marry me?" Vivian stared at him, then at the ring, then back at him. "Yes." The word came out as barely a whisper. "1,000 times yes." He slipped the ring onto her finger and it fit perfectly. Then a small voice erupted from behind the filing cabinet. "I knew it!" Kira burst out of her hiding spot, flowers still dusting her clothes. "I helped pick the stones." Vivian laughed through her tears, pulling the little girl into her arms. "You were in on this? Daddy said it was a secret mission." Darnell wrapped his arms around both of them. "So I guess this means you're staying." "I was always staying. Now it's just official." The wedding was small. Washington Park Rose Garden, 40 guests. Terrence stood as best man. Mrs. Patterson sat in the front row dabbing her eyes, and Kira stood between them at the altar, flower girl and ring bearer and junior officiant all in one. The minister began the standard words, but Kira interrupted. "We're here today to make Mama V officially ours, because she already is, but now there's paperwork." Laughter rippled through the gathering. The vows were simple. The kiss was perfect. And when Kira threw herself at both of them, her arms wrapping around their necks, Darnell felt something click into place that he had thought was broken forever. "We're a real family now. We were always a real family, Princess." "I know, but now everyone else knows too." 5 years later, Vivian stood at the podium of a conference hall looking out at 1,000 faces. Behind her a banner read, "Phoenix Rising National Conference, Building Tomorrow." The organization had grown beyond anything she had imagined. 50 locations across 10 states. Tens of thousands of women and children helped. "I want to tell you a story about a man who had almost nothing and a woman who thought she had everything, and a rainy night that changed both their lives forever." She looked down at the front row where Darnell sat with Kira, 12 years old now, brilliant and kind, and a 3-year-old boy who squirmed in his father's lap. "I was that woman, broken, bleeding, stumbling through a storm, convinced that no one would stop for me." Her voice steadied. "But someone did, a single father in a pickup truck with nothing but a good heart to offer." She smiled. "He taught me that wealth isn't measured in dollars. It's measured in the people who would fight for you, in the love you build, in the family you choose." Kira grinned and waved. The toddler, Marcus Jr., shouted, "Mama!" at the top of his lungs. Darnell just smiled, that quiet smile that still made her heart skip. "I stand before you today not as Vivian Hartwell, former CEO. I stand before you as Vivian Washington, wife, mother, founder of an organization that exists because one man made a choice to stop when he could have driven past." Her gaze found Darnell's. "If you take nothing else from today, take this: be the person who stops. Be the stranger who helps. Be the one who sees someone breaking and says, "Not on my watch." Her voice dropped to something softer, but the microphone carried it to every corner. Because you never know. The person you save might just save you right back. The applause thundered through the hall, but Vivian barely heard it. All she saw was her husband's smile, her daughter's wave, her son's delighted squirming. All she felt was the weight of the ring on her finger, 3 stones that meant everything. All she knew was that she had walked away from an empire and found a kingdom. Later that night, they sat on the porch of the house they had bought together. 3 bedrooms, a yard big enough for the kids to play, ordinary, perfect. Kira was inside, supposedly doing homework. Marcus was asleep. "You did good today." Darnell's arm was around her shoulders. "I had a good story to tell." "Our story?" "The best one I know." She leaned into him. "Do you ever think about that night, everything that could have gone wrong? Every day." His voice was soft. "I think about what would have happened if I'd driven past, if I'd let fear make the decision. But you didn't." "No, I didn't." He pressed a kiss to her hair. "And every day I'm grateful for that choice. For you, for us, for everything we've built." "The world has enough people who drive past." Vivian echoed the words that had become their family's creed. "We're the ones who stop. We're the ones who stop." Above them, the stars wheeled through the Georgia sky. But down here on this porch in this life, none of that indifference mattered. What mattered was the hand in hers, the children sleeping inside, the future stretching out before them. What mattered was that they had found each other in the storm, and they were never letting go.